Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to this new comparison test. Today we're looking at the most well-known cordless lawnmowers from Makita. On the right, we have the small DLM382, and next to it its slightly bigger brother, the DLM432. I assume that these two lawnmowers are probably found in most gardens because they're simple, practical, small, handy, and powerful. But how do these two models differ, and which of these two lawnmowers is the better one for you? That's exactly what today's video is about. So let's dive right into the comparison. But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, make sure to quickly subscribe to this channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. You'll find the current prices of these two lawnmowers listed in the video description below. Thank you for your support, and now let's get started after the intro. The Makita DLM382, or perhaps the slightly larger version, the DLM432. Which is the right cordless lawnmower from Makita for you in the small garden class, and what are the differences between these two very similar cordless lawnmowers? That's what I want to address in today's video. Before we get started, I should mention that I've already presented both models in detail. Today's video is exclusively about comparing these two models. If you haven't seen the individual reviews yet, make sure to check them out. I'll link them here in the top right corner. So, let's start the comparison test of these two cordless lawnmowers. Where do we begin? Naturally, with the most fundamental and striking difference, which is the size and weight. Honestly, at first glance, from this position, I would almost say that the same lawnmower is standing in front of me twice, even though we, of course, have two different models. In terms of appearance and design, both are definitely completely identical. Only in width is the 432 slightly more robust than the 382. You can see this especially well when we directly compare the chassis of these two lawnmowers. The 382 fits the 380mm blade easily in its chassis, which goes straight down. Meanwhile, the 432 essentially has the same chassis, but with an added width on the side to accommodate the 430mm blade underneath. The implementation of these two lawnmowers is almost completely identical. One could almost say, if you generalize quite a bit, we have a direct one-to-one model here, just slightly larger, and of course, everything is processed in typical Makita fashion. This means everything gives a very robust and solid impression. So both lawnmowers are really well made, and you can immediately feel when you touch them that you're holding something solid. Nevertheless, both feel completely identical. There is only one difference, and that's in the weight. Here's a quick comparison of these two weights. While the 382, which is this one here, has a weight including batteries of about 16.2 kilos, the 432, which is this one, has a weight including batteries of 16.8 kilos. We have a weight difference of just 600 grams, and honestly, in my opinion, this difference is not noticeable at all in handling. So, in terms of handling, depending on the weight of these two lawnmowers, both are completely identical in my opinion. So, whether it's the 380 or the 430, there's no noticeable difference here. But how about handling in terms of width? Because the 430 is naturally a bit wider than the 382. This difference becomes visible when we look at the axle width of these two lawnmowers. You can see that the 430 is slightly wider here. After measuring, we have a measurement from the outer edge of the wheel to the outer edge of the wheel. 400mm for the 380 and about 435mm for the 432, so about 35mm more for the 432. Whether this affects the handling, we'll see later in the test. Otherwise, let's stay here at the bottom, and as you can see, both lawnmowers have two nice big handles at the front for lifting and transporting these models, and as mentioned, this is not a problem with these two lawnmowers because they are very, very light at around 17 kilograms. Additionally, you can see the second handle at the back. This was not present in the previous model. Therefore, I can easily lift both lawnmowers and, of course, transport them accordingly. Finally, we find the installed wheels at the bottom. And, as you can see, both lawnmowers are again completely identical, both in terms of construction and assembly. And, as I said, I find the wheels of the 382, as well as the other new models, to be very, very well made, especially compared to the old 380. These wheels are rubberized, which means they run smoothly over hard surfaces like pavement or similar. And they also have ball bearings. They are really very, very smooth, as you can see here very clearly. And of course, this contributes to the maneuverability of these two lawnmowers. Thanks to the ball bearings, both models can be moved very comfortably and with minimal effort. Let's move a little further back and go directly to the cutting height adjustment of both lawnmowers. And as you can see, both are almost identical. However, there is a small difference in the alignment of the scale. On the 430, the scale is placed on the inside, while on the 380, it is on the outside. But this doesn't really matter, as both cutting height adjustments are completely identical in their implementation. This means the lever is very smooth, and the cutting height can be adjusted easily on both. Both devices offer a cutting height range from 20 to 75 millimeters. Right next to it, you can see these two nice transparent plastic protective covers, which are essentially the battery compartments for the two 18-volt batteries. And these are also completely identical, meaning both in shape, size, and construction. Both lawnmowers are 36-volt LXT devices, so I can easily use my 18-volt batteries. Two 18-volt batteries are needed in total, and it's recommended to use larger batteries for longer runtime. In this case, 18-volt 5 Ah batteries. I can use these just as well in the 432. Otherwise, what else is there to see? Well, not much actually. We have the two battery compartments and, at the back, the locking mechanism for the protective cover. This also locks automatically. I can simply let the flap drop, as demonstrated briefly. And as you can see, the compartment is now closed with the release button at the back. And very importantly, both models also have the red safety key. This means if the key is not inserted, bridging the contacts, the lawnmower will not operate. And also very practical, here at the bottom, quite discreetly, there's an LED warning light. It's not exactly a battery level indicator, but it is directed at the user. It starts blinking when the battery is running low, letting you know it's time to replace the battery as it's nearly empty. Next, we come to the grass collection basket of these two lawnmowers. There is a small but significant difference in size. While the 382 has a grass collection basket with a total capacity of 40 liters, the 432, which is the one in the back, has a total capacity of 50 liters, making it 10 liters larger than the 382. Well, 40 or 50 liters doesn't sound like much, and indeed, it isn't. But still, for small to medium-sized gardens for which these two devices are designed, this volume is definitely sufficient. It's also worth mentioning that both models, the 382 and the 432, can use a mulching plug instead of the collection basket, which can be inserted directly. However, this is not included in the delivery and is an optional accessory that must be purchased separately if needed. For this purpose, I've tilted both lawnmowers on their side so we can take a closer look at the blades. These are also different logically. The 382 has a blade with a diameter of 380 millimeters, while the 432 has a 430 millimeter blade. But the mounting, that is, the spindle, is different as well, as you can clearly see. One might think that these two lawnmowers are powered because of the strange cap at the back, which almost looks like a gearbox cover. However, this is not the case, as these two lawnmowers are passive and need to be pushed manually. Lastly, we come to the handles of these two lawnmowers. As you might expect, they're almost completely identical. However, the 432 offers a bit more in terms of size compared to the 382. The assembly and setup of both models are identical and can be done in a few minutes. I've shown this in separate videos for each device. The handles themselves are noteworthy as they're foam-coated, making them very comfortable, grippy, and non-slip. In terms of handling and operation, both models are identical. So, you see, you could say they took the DLM382, made it a bit wider, added a larger blade and collection basket, and now we have the DLM432. It's also worth mentioning, some people commented on my last video that both models apparently use the same motor. This would mean that the 432 might be somewhat weaker since it has a larger blade. But I'd say we'll only find out in the test. So let's finally start the practical test. Here we go. Makita DLM382 versus the next larger model, the DLM432. How big is the difference? That's exactly what this video is about. Additionally, as you can see, both lawnmowers have the same batteries, each with 5 ampere-hours, fresh from the charger for maximum power and a direct comparison. Also, the cutting height is set identically on both lawnmowers at 50 millimeters. I think this should be a good height, even for the 432, and this is how it looks. As you can see, there's quite a bit of grass that needs to be cut down to 50 millimeters by both lawnmowers, and of course, a lot of leaves as well. So, I'm curious to see how both lawnmowers will perform. And of course, it's very important that both collection baskets are completely empty. Let's see how much they contain after the test. So, let's start with test number 1, with the DLM432. I've divided the test area into 2 sections, the left for the DLM432 and the right for the smaller version, the 382. Let's see how both lawnmowers perform. As mentioned, there's quite a bit of grass to cut, and as you can see, there are also many leaves on the lawn. But as we saw in the individual review, both lawnmowers handle this relatively well. But the question is, how big is the difference? This will soon be revealed. The area looks pretty good as you can see, so I can't complain so far. But now for the other one, the 382. And I have to say, the difference is not as big as I thought. To my eyes, I can hardly tell a difference. So, both lawnmowers, despite the 432 being slightly wider and larger, are very, very similar. This means that both lawnmowers are very easy and pleasant to push over the lawn, as they both have ball bearings. Also, when turning, I didn't feel that the DLM432 was any heavier or more sluggish than the 382. As for the performance difference, unfortunately, I can't say anything about it yet because this test didn't really challenge both models. Looking at the areas, I personally can't see a direct difference here. They both look the same to me, even in terms of leaves. Of course, some leaves are still on the lawn, but the majority has definitely been collected, and the cut looks really good on both lawnmowers. Now, let's take a look at the interim result. What does the energy consumption say? I mowed approximately the same area with both lawnmowers, and, as you can see, all bars are still present on both. So, the energy consumption here is roughly identical again. Yes, now let's continue with test number 2, the extreme test. Now it's about the maximum performance of these two lawnmowers. Take a look at the lawn area. Although you can hardly call it a lawn anymore, it's a weed-covered area with numerous plants up to a height of about 60 centimeters for both lawnmowers. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see how both lawnmowers perform here. And of course, at the maximum setting, meaning at 55 millimeters as before, it's going to be quite critical here. That's why we're going up to 75 millimeters. And now it gets interesting. How do both lawnmowers perform? So far, it looks pretty good. No overload protection or anything like that. Also, both are running at a moderate speed, so until now, it looks pretty good. No major difference apparent. And even if we look at the ground, both lawnmowers have definitely collected the clippings so far. It must be said, of course, the 382 has a significantly smaller collection basket. This could definitely be a disadvantage when mowing such tall grass, but in terms of performance, both seem to be really identical here as well. Honestly, I have to admit, I was definitely expecting different results here, namely that the 432 would struggle more compared to the 382, or that the overload protection would kick in, but as we've seen, no problem. So both have really pulled through solidly and also collected the clippings. Honestly, I was quite surprised that both performed so identically here. Let's take a look at the collection basket. As mentioned, the 432 can hold 10 liters more, and you can see that too, because the 382 is really full to the brim with weeds and grass. With the 432, there's definitely still room for a few more passes. So, In conclusion, as I mentioned earlier, I couldn't really discern a significant difference between these two Makita lawnmowers. After all, I tested and scrutinized both extensively, but they seem to be identical in terms of both handling and performance. So, there are no differences here, except for the fact that the 432 is slightly larger in size. So, that wraps it up for now. I hope this video helped you in your decision between these two lawnmowers. If you enjoyed the video, as always, feel free to show it with a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell to never miss a video again. You can find the current prices of these two lawnmowers to support my work below in the video description. Thank you for your support, have a great day, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Until then, take care.